Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Ask Dr. Zaino Live. Thank you all for being on here. I do see, if you're watching in from our live feed page on chirothoughtleaders.com, that there's already dozens of people online and even logged into the chat roll right now. So if you're watching and it's your first time here, let me kind of orientate you to what you're looking at. The video there is a live feed. Right below that video, you'll see our social media links: Facebook, Google+, Twitter, LinkedIn, pin it. Please hit those buttons. Share, this page with your colleagues. Let them know that you're here watching, and we really appreciate that. Right below those links, you'll see the live chat roll. This is very important, guys, and we appreciate it. Over the last 25 weeks we've been doing this show. You guys have been awesome. Questions, comments, all of that is very welcomed and encouraged. And we're going to definitely get to your questions tonight. We have a special guest. I'll just tell you, it's Dr. Dan Sullivan, if you saw in the email. And we've got some really, really cool stuff to talk about tonight. In fact, on that topic, right below the chat roll, if you continue scrolling down on this page, chirothoughtleaders.com/ask-dr-Zaino, you'll see a link there that says Back to the Brain. And this is something that I definitely want to jump into right off the bat and talk about. Is a training, a very important training that Dr. Dan Sullivan is doing right now, live. It's a live launch. It's all new, and it's about really improving, I think, chiropractor certainty, but also getting the perception of chiropractic out there and getting it up and getting it where it needs to be in our society. So I want to go ahead and introduce Dan Sullivan for those of you who haven't met him. Dan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you loud and clear, and can
loud
see you
and
good.
Clear. It's not skipping.
No, it sounds good.
Okay, but my picture's frozen though, right?
No, I see you moving, and I hear a stutter, but I think that's just you. I think that's normal.
Can you you see me? I'm moving back and forth. Yes, I'm giving you thumbs up.
Shaking your head, 2 thumbs up. I love it.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, yep. So it's just my screen then. All right, cool. Mine's froze up where I'm at, but good that everybody's here. Honored to be here, and anytime there's people on the other line and they want to hear about chiropractic, I like to be involved. So I'm honored to be here tonight.
Well, thank you, brother. And I just want everybody to know, I know a lot of people out there, especially the Chiro Thought Leaders. Dan, Dr. Sullivan, he was with us for the Bulletproof Certainty product. That's an amazing training that you guys should definitely check out. But Dr. Sullivan is a very successful chiropractor. And if you don't mind, Dan, I'm going to call you Dan instead of Dr. Dan, Dr. Sullivan. Just tell us a little bit about your story and where you got to where you are, and then we're going to jump into what is Back to the Brain.
Let me tell you the most important parts probably that are relevant. So I came from a very medical background. I came from a very medical family. I've got 2 brothers that are medical doctors. I got a mom that's a nurse, been a nurse for 35 years. I've got a sister who's an occupational therapist. So when I grew up, I wanted to be like them, particularly my brothers. And I wanted to be a medical doctor because that's kind of the path that they were on. And I was injured in high school, sports, and chiropractor was who helped me. So I thought chiropractic was just about back pain, and a noble thing. It helped me get back on my feet and play sports in college and high school. But I didn't understand what chiropractic was. So lo and behold, fast forward, that's kind of the story that you all hear. But for me, with that medical background, I was always kind of felt like I had to prove chiropractic to my family and for that matter, to myself. So I got some great mentoring in chiropractic college. I really, was drawn to the philosophy of chiropractic, Reggie Gold, Fred Barge, the Sigafus of the world. And but my analytical side wouldn't allow me just to say, just believe me on this or borrow my belief. So although I came out, right, built a huge practice, 4.5 years, hit that, century mark. For me, it was like the glory mark, hit 1,000 a week as a single doctor office. I hit it, and I was in the schools at the time speaking, and I realized, and I had known this before, but I've been out of it for a few years, that although I was having some success and ultimately changed some lives in practice, I was seeing what was going on in schools and seeing what was going on in the professions, what was going on even real, if I hear this guy, this for that matter is telling me that it may, you're just good for back pain, the evidence just supports that, musculoskeletal. So I just dove into all that because I want to know not only, from a practice standpoint of what can I look my patients in the eye to them, but then globally, it's like this. If subluxation is real, that's why I always kind of come to this conclusion. If subluxation is real, then we've got a big issue on our hands because nobody knows about it. If it's not, then that's another big issue on our hands because we've got 120 testimonies of amazing stories. So we got to figure out how that's happening, right? So you still hear me, Tabor?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're definitely skipping just a little bit, but we can hear you.
You can get it out. Okay, so I'll keep going. Let me know if it gets worse or there's some reason you can't. So,
okay.
So those are my two dilemmas I came to. Either if subluxation is real, and which I knew in my heart, obviously that it is, but I needed to know enough to be irrefutable in any room to walk into, whether it be a professor, an MD, a PhD, a stay-at-home mom, a plumber, an electrician, and be able to look them in the eye and give them recommendations and tell them what we do and tell.
Dan, I think we lost you there for a second. Are you still there? Well, you might have to refresh or restart your page there, Dan. We can't hear you at all. I'm going to go ahead and talk about, because one question I'm going to ask Dan when he comes back here is about the perception of chiropractic to the public. And I think, we have dozens of chiropractors on the line right now, and I'm talking to you guys now. I was very fortunate last weekend to, Dan, are you there still? Okay. So I was very fortunate last weekend. I got to go up to Park City, Utah, and I got to actually stay at Patrick Gentempo's house. There was a lot of other chiropractors there that were just huge names. I mean, I was just humbled and honored to even be there amongst these guys. And one of the things that they talked about, and it was really a topic of debate and discussion, was how do we improve the public's perception of chiropractic? And what I was surprised about was that there were a lot of different opinions. I mean, everyone had an opinion, and definitely we agreed on some, but there were people taking the side of, it is good for back pain. And, the public already understands it as a back pain. And then there were some that were taking the side that, we're limited. We're limited if we focus on back pain. That chiropractic is so much better that you could actually make money being cash and being a family, chiropractor and adjusting for subluxation. And then the question, could we actually, educate the public about subluxation, and for that to actually be something that drives the public's perception, and then if we use subluxation, would that make chiropractic stronger? And that's something that I really appreciate Dr. Sullivan in his studies. And if you watched the course, or if you took some of the, watch some of the free videos on Bulletproof Certainty, and I believe you can go to bulletproofcertainty.com and see those free videos that I did with Dr. Sullivan. But he talks about how the research is there that every time we make an adjustment, we change the brain, guys. We literally change the brain, and you make someone's life better from the inside out. So if that's true, and if that's a fact, then we're doing something much bigger than just back pain. And I'm not sure that Dr. Sullivan really talks about this, but this was my argument when I was up there in Park City. So how we're split right now in chiropractic. We have, I don't mean this to be derogatory at all, but I don't know what else to call them. We have the metapractors, right? And then we have what I would call principled. I don't know what the metapractors would call us, but I would call us principled. And you're really having two divisions that are going two different directions. Dan, are you back? I see you there.
I'm here, and it's working
Awesome.
now. I had to close out some windows.
Awesome. Yep, I hear you, and I'm good. So I actually took us into talking about the public's perception, and I was telling people that I got to spend a weekend with Dr. Gentempo and some other guys, and that was really a major discussion. That what do we do? Do we go the direction of back pain, and where the public's already understood that, or at least it seems like they do a little bit, or is it bigger than that? And is it important that we tell people that it's bigger than that? I know you got some some heavy words to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, here's my thing. I want to know somebody who's actually on the side of going in the back pain. And I know there's certain organizations and associations that would say, let's just go. And I think their theory is that if we could just lead with that, then once they get that, then we can tell them the truth. Just think about how bad that sounds. Like once they hear we're good at back pain, then maybe they'll be open to being more. That's as crazy as I've ever heard anything. And to me, I'm willing to have that debate, discussion, and argument for that matter. I think that's the worst thing that we can do. Now, here's my part of the discussion would say, I believe if we understand the subluxation, what it does, what it is, and what it influences, and then and consequently then the adjustment, all of this is a moot point. We won't even have this discussion. So like to me, the people that just want to grab on to back pain are the people that don't truly understand what the magnitude of what we do. And I'm not even here to say, just borrow my belief because my philosophy tells me this. That's me, but I can argue it from a scientific standpoint as to why it is beneficial that if we give up, the opportunity to really tell people what we do, what a subluxation influences, what chiropractic can influence, then we've lost. And here's the deal. To me, we haven't lost as a profession. Sure, we could all go have great back pain practice, and it would be a great noble cause. I'm not saying that's not a noble cause. I'm saying that if we're preventing people from opioids and drugs, that is a noble thing. Here's the thing, though. How many kids, babies, moms, dads would never get the care they deserve because they never have back pain? Listen to this. So this is a study. So here's the deal. I can never sit down. In fact, I spoke to the 8th quarter students today. It's so hard for me to sit down during these webinars. But listen to this. Listen to the statistic. There was a study in 2003 that they found. They took 154 kids, 10-year-old kids, 79 girls, 75 boys, 154 10-year-olds, and they put them in an MRI unit. They wanted to feel what the attention was to see the cause of stenosis. They wanted to kind of see the relativity of stenosis in 10-year-olds and see if they can target a population to see why are they having this and is their genetic predisposition and so forth. Here's what they found. They found that 9% of these 10-year-olds, so 10-year-olds, 9% of these 10-year-olds had asymptomatic disc degeneration. So 14 out of the 154 had already asymptomatic disc degeneration. So that was 2003. The study came out 2015 that showed that 37% of 20-year-olds have asymptomatic disc degeneration. So what does this mean? What is my point here? My point is that's very clear that you don't even, I'm not even talking about the neurology right now. What I'm saying is physiologically in our bodies, you do not need to have pain. It's just like why you get your blood pressure, cholesterol, all these things checked because they know they don't cause pain. But it's the same thing with us. So if we go down that route of pain, you see who we just eliminated? It makes no sense, even from a scientific standpoint, even if you don't even want to even if we want to take neuro out of it, which is insane, but there's some good. So you see my point is, we limit it. We don't lose as a profession because, again, like I said, we could have successful offices and businesses and even the profession could thrive. We get more people into the profession. It looks like we're actually having success, but at what cost? Because then there's kids and babies and moms and dads that never get the care because they don't have that back pain that we supposedly treat, right? So that's my, I get pretty passionate about that part.
Let me share a personal story. Are you hearing a double?
No, I hear you fine.
An echo?
No.
Okay. So this is a personal story that will drive home Dan's point is that so when I was a kid, I was a teenager, I had horrible low back pain that would shoot down my legs. And I was on every medication you could think of until I found a chiropractor. Absolutely changed my life. Within months of getting care, I was a normal 16-year-old kid again, able to do anything that I wanted. Loved my chiropractor, and I thought, who in the world would not want to be a chiropractor when you can help people with back pain, right? So I went to chiropractic school, and my second year of chiropractic school, I got a phone call in the middle of the night that my mom had passed away. She died of a heart attack in the middle of her sleep. And I went home, and you know how hard it is if you've ever had a loved one that you've lost, how you have to go through all the things. And I was going through her case that she was carrying with her all the time, her overnight case is what she called it. she was taking, I pulled out, I don't know how many she was taking every day, but I pulled out 21 prescription medications out of her overnight case. 21 prescriptions. And that's when it hit me that she was looking for the cure. She was looking for that next thing that she could put inside of her body from the outside in that would heal her, that would fix the symptoms that she had. And I realized that I had back pain when I was a kid, so I went to a chiropractor. But my mom, even though she had so many health problems, she didn't have back pain, right? She didn't have the back pain that was bad enough to that her say, well, I want to go to the chiropractor. And so when I graduated from chiropractic school, I went back to all the hospitals that she had been in New Mexico. And I knew that they kept x-rays and they kept files for a long time. I checked out all my mom's images. There are x-rays or CT scans. There's nucleotide brain scans I have. I never gave them back to the hospitals. I just took them and I checked them out. And I wanted to see what my mom's spine must have looked like. And that was the only way I knew to get the images, was to go to the hospitals. And I did for hours. I sat there and I went through those films one after another, trying to see an image of my mom's spine. But guess what? There was not one x-ray of my mom's spine. There was, she was a diabetic. She had neuropathy. There was x-rays of her knees and her ankles where she had Charcot joint. She was kidney failure. She was on dialysis. So there was CT scans of her organs. And like I said, there was even a nucleotide brain scan, but she didn't have back pain that was bad enough to elicit a medical x-ray. And that's when I realized that this was what, my purpose and my job was to do, was to check every spine, no matter whether they had pain or not. And I think that, when you just said that, that's the danger of chiropractic going into a back pain model, is that there's so many women, children, and people that are going to be left behind, that are going to be dropped because we're not going to be checking their spines.
Let me ask you, do you use that story for your doctor's report and your dinners?
I do tell that story in my dinner to, a certain version of that story. I tell them that's what I do, and that's why we want to check people, and as many people as we can. I don't care what symptoms or no symptoms, but we just want to be there. Yeah.
I mean, that's the stuff. I mean, you have, like, first of all, I know you a little bit, and I didn't know necessarily that story. I know you kind of some of your other stories, but that is a huge, that's a huge point. Meaning, do you not think 20 medications, that there was some relationship between the spine and the physiology that was driving the necessity for these medications? So would it have been valuable that somebody steps into your mom's life and says, you should come to a dinner, or somebody steps into your mom's life and says, you should actually come to this appointment with you, or you should actually get a valuation, because there could be a link. And so this is our job, and this is where it comes back to the dinners. Like, it always comes back to this thing. We talk about, Dr. Zaino has a great story, but you know what? We all have our story. I mean, that story is like, it's just how, like, I could use that story, and I would, like, that is my blood. I'm like, who doesn't deserve that? So if you call me extreme, call me whatever you want to call me. I value life. I value this thing. Look how many birthdays that your mom missed out on. Look how many, she never got to see your children. Look at, I mean, like that. Yeah. So call me crazy, call me the insane one, call me the goofy one. I don't care. There's the value that we have is called life. I was talking about today, Sid Williams, he said, there's nothing bigger than life. And that's the thing that we have to grab a hold of, is that we're dealing with the single most important physical asset we have in the physical realm. In my opinion, that's called health. And we get to deal with it, and we deal with it in a way that's so unique, and we have a philosophy that backs it up. And so the idea that somebody wants to, try to get our profession to give that up, or just to kind of sell that out, not on my dime, man, not on my watch. It's like that. So anyway, back to, so great story. I hope that, that's the DNA of how you get people to move, is you have to have I was going to talk about one of the things I had on my notes, was just, as I was thinking about today, and I got to do a training on Friday with an office, and one of the things I'm going to go over is that one of the reasons why we're not getting some of the results in our offices, and in my opinion, why some of you listeners out there, that you need to hear this, which is that what's way more important right now than emotion, than the IQ, how smart you are, is your EQ, and how good you can communicate and connect with people. How much can you build rapport? And so, unfortunately, a lot of us, we're never taught that. We're not, we never had any like communication classes, but the reality is a practice and growing a big practice or being better or getting better results with people has to do with communication. And so in order to raise your EQ, one of the things I'm very passionate about doing is if the more certainty you have, regardless of your, like I'm an introverted guy, like I don't love like, interacting with one-on-one. I'd rather speak to a group of 500 than, one, it's just, but the more certainty you have, the better you get with emotional intelligence, the better you get with connection, because you don't constantly feel like you're trying to convince people, like you're trying to push this thing up a hill. If you're certain about it, they either take it or leave it. And you're okay with that because of what you value that that you hold and the value that you deliver. So that's my passion about even like this Back to the Brain program or anything that I do right now is focused on bringing chiropractors the truth of the matter, not extreme, not saying, oh, you this or that, not trying to make it bigger than what it is. But the more you can get certainty around this thing called subluxation and the value of your adjustment, then the better you can communicate, the better you'll connect with people, the more rapport you'll build. You're not trying. And then the biggest thing, which is when we're talking about communication, it's very clear. Anthony Robbins, any guru talks about this. Over 80% of communication is nonverbal. So if that's the case, it's all about who you are, what you think, the value of yourself, your tone, your posture, the way you speak, how, just the way, the vibe you give out. That's, and again, that all boils down to, what's the true value and esteem you have in yourself. And so, so vital, so many aspects, but my flavor is really, certainty in the subluxation.
Awesome, man. I love what you do. And what I want to do in just a second, I want to ask you about what is Back to the Brain, right? And what is that training that you're promoting right now? Before we get to that, though, I want to cover a couple of questions and comments that we have that people are asking live right now. Hector says, I have a friend who's a medical doctor. We are always getting into arguments into the validity of research for the effectiveness of chiropractic care. He gets very technical and specific on the type of studies that are performed. I'm wondering if this is anything you encounter when you speak in front of medical doctors.
That's a great question. And when I speak to groups of medical doctors, I don't necessarily get that one-on-one kind of like, rebuttal. In fact, and maybe it's because it's one of those things where it's just like a patient, a lot of times, even though they may say they want research, if they want research, chances are they're smelling uncertainty in you. Because I've never had someone who's like, the only people that want research, they were already skeptic and they never became a patient. So like, and they were never like really, they were just trying to make a reason to get out, and, right. But there are a few very genuine people that saying, hey, do you have, again, the evidence to support whatever may have come out. But to your question, my immediate response is, it's not, sometimes it's just not worth it. Sounds like this guy, first of all, here's the question I always ask. Someone says, do you have research? So you got your MD friend. Do you have research? Can you have research to prove the efficacy of chiropractic care for, whatever they say, right? So the first question I ask back is, what would you accept as research? Do you have evidence? Well, what do you accept as evidence? Same thing as the vaccine world too. It's like, well, do you have evidence to support the da-da-da-da? Well, what do you accept as evidence? Because anything you give them, do you realize they're actually going to tell you that's not good enough? So so that's the first question. Second question that I always, because I'm always trying to get to the premise, meaning I want them to be on the same playing field as us. Because most times when they ask that question, they're expecting us to have a higher standard of science and research than they do for their own stuff. Yeah. So I've got two brothers that are medical doctors, and I know the training that they have. They're just, and again, they're not taught to ask the right questions. They're just taught to have the right answer. Like, what's the response? So, yes, I mean, again, I'm going to come back to this main question, which is get to the premise, saying, okay, because now you have to do a little homework, because like for instance, they recommend Tylenol for children or certain, antibiotics for sinus infections. Do you know antibiotics for sinus infections has been ruled ineffective by many studies for a long time, yet they still recommend them. Same thing with ear infections and antibiotics for ear infections. So the bottom line is they still do it. And the question is, why would they still do it? So they're going to come and attack us because we don't apparently have the research, but that they still do it, even though their own research says it isn't effective. Do you start to see that? And I'm not saying like we have better. I'm just saying, let's get on the same playing field here, brother. You know, you can't have this argument when you're trying to expect me, like you don't have that standard. So that's the other thing I always bring it back to. Now, I'm not saying we're bad, we're good because they're bad, meaning just because they don't have it means that we shouldn't have it either. Here's what I will say. I get out of the symptom treating or condition-based research, because that's not where we win. Where we win or where we are effective is in getting them to understand the science, and then the science of just logical science, like there's an intimate relationship between the spine and the brain. Most people don't know that. There's an intimate relationship between the spine and the autonomic nervous system. See, that's science that nobody knows. Let me give you an example. So when I was speaking in March 11th at the Med Center in Nebraska, and so there was a PhDs, bunch of 40 PhDs, MDs, and one of the guys was Irving Zucker. He's the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Physiology. The guy's been 40 years studying the neurohumoral effects of cardiac failure. So basically, he studies autonomic function and its relationship to cardiac failure. And the guy gets around $4 million a year for his research center. I mean, he's the top dog in that kind of arena. And so I got done doing my hour-long presentation on the neurophysiology of the human spine, and talked about the autonomic system and all the things that, well, I'm speaking his language. And so he ended up saying, hey, I got something I want to show you. We sat down about 45 minutes. He was showing me kind of the latest of the greatest that they have going on. That's mind blowing. And let me get into this content, because I was going to tell you that I was going to go over the story anyway. So he goes over and explains how the greatest thing they have, the latest thing rather, not the greatest, but the latest thing they're working on is they're taking rats that have heart disease, and they're cutting them open. There's a plant in Morocco, and in this plant out of Morocco, there's a certain gel in this plant that is 1,000 times stronger than capsaicin. Capsaicin is the hot or the heat in pepper. And so it's 1,000 times stronger than that. So what they do is they bring that back, they dilute it down a little bit, and then they take it and they paint it or rub it onto the outside of the heart of these rats that have heart disease. And what it does is it kills the afferent nerves. It burns the afferent nerves around the heart. And then what that does is it stops the messages from the afferent nerves into the brain. So no longer is that the amount of sympathetic dominance or that sympathetic, fight or flight response goes down, because those afferent nerves aren't firing to the brain saying, hey, we've got major stress down here, heart's not good, right? So they're seeing some good changes with these hearts. Now, I asked a little bit further. I'm like, well, why, has this been, where's that in the FDA? Why isn't it, is it ready to go for humans? He's like, well, there's a couple of things that we haven't figured out but once we get through those, I think it'll go. And I was like, well, what are those? And he said, it's these rats, some of these rats, when they get this done, they literally scratch themselves till their skin is gone. And so that's the reason why it's just a little side effect. Like, you better get that thing. Yeah. I'd get that one looked at a little further before you. So the point in that whole story is that some of the greatest researcher in the world right now for autonomic function and its relationship with heart failure is looking at changing the autonomic function, changing the sympathetic tone of the nervous system, reducing that fight or flight stress response, because we know that changes the norepinephrine, because it changes the hypothalamus. It's going to affect, influence the hypothalamus. It's going to change the stress hormones. It's going to change that norepinephrine. The same words that he was using: norepinephrine, sympathetic tone, right? Stress response. And so he knows that will change that. So they're looking for ways to change the sympathetic nervous system, the autonomic system. And so that's the greatest thing going on right now in medicine for heart failure. And lo and behold, on the other side of this thing, I had just got done talking to him about how the spine has an intimate relationship with the autonomic nervous system. When that spine has altered position and altered movement, it puts the body, it changes the autonomic nervous system, because there's pathways directly into the brain, the hypothalamus. It puts the autonomic nervous system in a sympathetic dominant state, let alone there's a reflex arc that is also affected, that goes right to the sympathetic chain ganglion, that also stimulates the adrenal medulla and the immune system and all the viscera. So you see, here's the point, is that we have this thing called a spine that has an intimate relationship with the autonomic nervous system. And this friend of yours, that's a medical doctor, I guarantee you has never heard that. He doesn't know that there's an intimate relationship between the spine and the autonomic nervous system. And if you don't know that, then for me to give you a study that says chiropractic is effective for back pain or headaches or digestion or ear infections, to me, I've completely leaped out of something that I would never even want to go into. I'm not trying to argue the fact that we help ear infections. I'm trying to argue the fact that the spine has an intimate relationship with the autonomic nervous system. And when it's misaligned, not moving appropriately and not aligned appropriately, it absolutely puts the body into a sympathetic dominant state. And that right there influences all aspects of human physiology. I'm not saying it causes the ear infection, but it absolutely will influence an ear infection because the immunity goes down. If the immunity goes down, the body can't, the ears aren't draining. So you see how that goes. So that's why my argument is always go back to the science, not just give me tit for tat for a randomized clinical controlled trial of here were these kids that had stomach problems and then they got adjusted it because you put 10 kids that have stomach problems, that it's a tough study in chiropractic because it's like, give me 10 kids that have stomach problems and we all get them adjusted and or have them get adjusted, half of them don't. Well, what if 2 of them truly had, like, every day they have cow's milk, they have, their body's full of, they've had, 6 rounds of antibiotics. They were born C-section, which means they lose their number one form of probiotics, which was that, bowl of bacteria that we swallow when we're born, if it, through the vaginal canal. So you start to see it like, we can't just see if we're good with 10 kids that have, you start to see that's the philosophy of chiropractic. That's why our philosophy is so beautiful. And we have science to back up, regardless of the symptom, that it influences the brain. So this is where you get back to the brain. We don't, it's not about a back problem. Let me tell you the number one thing that I have every time I speak. So no matter where I'm at, this is what I try to get, people, everybody to understand, is that if you ask all your patients, do this tomorrow, ask all your patients, right? Or ask a new patient that comes in, all the new ones that come in tomorrow. And you sit down, you shake your hands, you kind of start, you build rapport, But now you say, Mark, would you rather have a back problem or a brain problem? And there will be nobody that tells you I would rather have a brain problem than a back problem. So we know nobody wants a brain problem because they know brain problem bad, back problem, just a little thing, I go get my back cracked.
It's true. But
if they know there's a brain problem, we've just leaped into the, now I'm concerned. And I'm not trying to make a scare tactic to try to make you more concerned. The best evidence in the world supports that back problem, what we call vertebral subluxation, is a brain problem. And so that was the whole focus of this, the program and my kind of some of the initiatives I have right now is back to the brain, putting the nervous system back in chiropractic. It's not a back problem, it's a brain problem. We're going back to the brain. So I want to get patients to understand, I want the public to understand, and we can do it with evidence because there's some great studies, there's some great research that clearly shows that we influence the brain every time we make adjustment.
Absolutely, man. 100% with you. I want us to kind of move towards the close by reading a couple of the comments that we have on here. By the way, Hector replied to your answer, says, great answer. I've gotten to the point where I don't really listen to him. I know chiropractic works and I've seen the results that I get through chiropractic care. Definitely agree with you, Dr. Dan. Letitia, you are right. Even if you take neurology out of it, biomechanically, we need to be adjusted early in age. This is what needs to happen. I'm just not sure how we incorporate this to the medical system so that they are aware of it. And then one more, I don't understand how they don't know. It's in all the textbooks, Dr. Dan. You learn it in anatomy and physiology class. Absolutely. So as we start to wind this show down, I want to encourage everybody to click on the link below the chat roll. If you're watching in from chirothoughtleaders.com/ask-dr-Zaino, you'll notice if you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a link there for you to click back to the brain. It will show you all of what Dr. Dan Sullivan has put together on the research, the training, how to really show you how to use this stuff and to start getting people back to the brain. And so what we're doing here at Chiro Thought Leaders is for everyone who purchases that program through our link, through that link that you're seeing there, one of the links that we sent you through the email, is we're adding 2 bonus programs. These bonuses, there's literally thousands of dollars worth of bonuses. I'm gonna kind of show you. The first one is we're gonna give you our entire replay of the 2016 CTL seminar. That's over 10 hours of thought leaders who came together to share leadership on marketing, philosophy, practice systems, things that will help you achieve your highest success. That's over a $500 value, maybe even more than that, because you know everybody who attended that seminar had to fly, they had to stay at hotels. You're getting lifetime access to those videos. We'll also give you access to the CTL, what we call private club. All right, so this is this is a private training intensive that we don't sell. It's only available through the bonuses. If you purchase the product, that this bonus comes with it. It's there were chiropractors who met with Dr. Zaino who paid over $5,000 to be there. Discusses x-ray presentation, values, speed of implementation, mindset, purpose, your elevator speech, dinner workshops, and even the doctor's report over 6 hours of training. And that's obviously a $5,000 value that chiropractors paid for. So you get those bonuses if you go through that link. And then as we draw to a close, Dr. Dan, I want you to kind of just share a little bit about what's in the program. I know they can see it if they click on the link, but if you'll take us out with that.
Yeah, let me, I think that one of the best things to do is there's 7 modules. And if I just go through, because I think this describes them pretty good. Again, the purpose of them is to change your office from a back-oriented office into a brain and nervous system-oriented office. And it's probably a lot easier than you think. It's not like you got to change it. And the first thing is, like I said, you got to change your own self. You walk into a room, I need to change you. I need to get you that your nonverbal communication, you're not trying to be defensive when people are saying, well, this or that. And it's not like, you don't have back pain patients. That's not the case. I mean, that's where they start. So it's just converting them from the get-go. So the number one thing is the other thing is I want to increase the amount of new patients that you qualify. So a lot of us think, well, how many new patients possible are there? How many people, in your community? Yeah, everybody needs it, but like, how can I really truly show them that they need it? So one of my first things, and here's what happened. I was watching the movie Bought, or the documentary, and they talked about how the cholesterol medication, that overnight, one study overnight qualified 72 million people to be on cholesterol medication, because they changed the number from 300 down to 200 as normal, and it qualified 72 million. And of those, 20 million people got on the drug overnight. And we know we even know the craziness about that drug. It's not even, it's not a cholesterol problem. So, but the bottom line is, I got me thinking, I'm like, do we as chiropractors have the evidence to support, what about our studies? And I'm telling you, when I dove into this stuff, it is unbelievable. So we can qualify, and I didn't go, let's qualify 100%. I said, what would it be like if you could qualify 40% more people to be under care, or for you to be able to easily describe why they should be evaluated? 40% in your community. Every time you do a dinner, every time you do a talk, even when you're doing, you're at the, you have evidence that supports when you're talking to a new patient or someone that's been there for a while, why does everybody need care? What's the evidence that supports that? So module 1 is qualifying billions into chiropractic care right now. And so it's all about changing the conversation. I want you guys to remember this. It is not you or mine. The fact that chiropractic is effective and is good and is great and it's a gift and it's amazing has nothing to do with you or I helping that. What I mean by that is sometimes we take the responsibility and the blame. Someone comes out, well, how's chiropractic work for this or that? And we all of a sudden take on that whole blame. Listen, the reason why chiropractic is great has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the intimate relationship between the spine and the central nervous system. So knowing that, to me, it removes your responsibility or your, having to defend it. It just is what it is. So we've just never been proposed like this. In my opinion, I've never been exposed to a way to say, well, I guess, yeah, that's true. Dr. Zaino does a good job. A lot of times he's like, this isn't our principle, and he's right. But let's even take a step further with the science. Like it's because of the intimate relationship between the spine and the brain is the reason why we get great results. So I teach you how to change the conversation, the real role of the spine, and that it's more than compression. It's not about hard bones pinching on soft nerves. That we're simplifying the subluxation story, but we're making it unlimited. So that's That's module 1. Module 2, understanding how to qualify. Module 3 is it's all about the brain. And talk about the neurospinal organ, how this brain is in an intimate relationship, the science behind that. Module 4 is about preaching what we practice. So this is how you actually include this in a new patient acquisition, how when you go out and you're actually going to communicate it, how do you do it simply back to the brain? Module 5 is the proof is in the pudding. This is where I have 38 pieces of literature that walk you through and backs up why 120 years of testimonies happen in our offices and why they make sense. Module 6 is converting the unchiropractic patient, the patient that comes in that's not a chiropractic patient. How, and they all are, right? They all don't think, they're skeptics. They're all unchiropractic. They all most likely have never been in chiropractic care for a long period of time or regular care. So how do we convert them to deliver the goods? And then module 7 is about the advantage of our view, philosophy, and evidence-based practice. Why we win that every time. If you understand the philosophy, you'll understand how to have these arguments, and more importantly, how to have this. Never have to have the arguments because you're so certain about what you do. So also included in there is 2 full PowerPoints and me walking you through how to do these talks. So an inside talk and an outside talk. Something that you can, and it isn't like to take place of your doctor's report, but it's to add to. You can, there's all the slides, all the, all the material, all the content, all the research, and then me actually giving that through a video that you can hear how I do that. And the same thing with an outside talk. It's not to change your or to adopt that whole outside talk, whether you're at a screen or at a bank or it doesn't matter where you're at, so you can have those, you'll have actual talks and all the evidence to support that. So, and there's a host of other things in there. New patient power. So back to the brain, there's 3 new posters, well, two new. You see the one behind me, that the power of the adjustment poster, but then there's also 2 new posters that the only way you can get them right now, and I've been speaking a lot lately, and I show them on slides, and the only way right now these posters are available in the back of the brain. I'm going to make them available probably at the end of the year, but right now, because I want them, these 2 new posters are designed, I designed them specifically to help educate on how a subluxation is so detrimental to the brain. But, and there's one of them has literally 4 studies at the bottom of it. Boom, 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 right? And it's not for them to read it, it's just them to know that it's there. But it's all about how to change that perception of that person. Say, hey, listen, there's a little kid on there in a brain. So it's basically saying it's back to the brain. A subluxation is not a back problem, it's a brain problem. So there's a host of other things you can see in there. But again, my number one intention is to change your practice. Really, it's about getting more people under care, and the people that are under care to get them better to understand what's happening every time they adjustment, so they have more referrals, they stay longer, and everything increases your bottom line. That's the only reason anymore that to me is worthy of doing anything, is to make sure the bottom line is increasing. So that's a little bit about it.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you for being so on purpose. I know that you are, because it not only comes out as you speak, but I follow you on Facebook and social media, and I know that you're always going, man. You never stop. So thank you for doing that. And for everybody who is on tonight, thank you so much for being on here with us. If you scroll down again on the live page, you'll see at the bottom our affiliate link. Now, one thing we did not mention, for those of you who are still here, is that this closes tomorrow night at midnight. You won't be able to get these bonuses that we're including. There is some what's the word I'm looking for? There's some reason to actually take action tonight, because that a lot of this will go away. So thank you all again for being here, and we will see you on the next show. Dr. Dan, you are awesome.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it, man. Thanks, guys.
You bet.